skydiving. Hope comes and stops us in our tracks. Bravely we prove in our striving, trudging together each day. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Trudging Together Raw Recovery with Dion Miller. Today we have on a recent friend of mine. His name is Greg. We just met this last week. We had a fantastic talk yesterday. And you know, I always try and keep saying, what it comes down to is this. Every single person's story is important. We all come from different backgrounds. And the reason I am excited today is because we're going to be hitting a topic that usually doesn't come up a lot. And Greg is very knowledgeable on what he's doing. I love the work that he's doing, and I'm excited to have him on. So, Greg, it's good to see you, and welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be seen.
So why don't we start out a little bit with your drinking career, what your drinking was like?
My drinking career started kindergarten and then carried on, and then I got kicked out of 6th grade at Pine Lane Elementary for drinking on the playground.
That's usually a story you don't hear.
Oh, yeah, that was the very first, they didn't know what to do.
Sure they didn't. Well, that would have been pretty new back in, the 80s?
Yeah.
I mean, that was something they wouldn't have known how to deal with. They probably took your bottle and drank it, actually.
Well, all 6 of us got suspended anyway.
Okay. All right.
And then we started the Sunday through Monday drinking club.
Okay.
Through high school with a lot of Parker natives.
Okay. That's Parker, Colorado.
And then I saw the beginnings of methamphetamine or crystal.
Sure.
I saw friends of mine when I moved into Aurora, even though we were going to redneck bars, they were doing meth.
Okay.
And I didn't want anything to do with it. I saw some of the scary advertisements as like you would.
Mm-hmm. Well, we grew up in that was the Ronald Reagan era.
Yes, the war on drugs.
Yeah, so we had MAD and we had everything else going on. That was a big time for education on drugs. It
was huge, and I made the decision to get out of here, out of Parker, and not be affiliated with my Parker friends, and I joined the Navy. And
how old were you when you joined the Navy?
23.
Okay.
I was a pretty good wrestler. I coming out of high school, I got a 3-quarter ride scholarship to Nebraska.
Wow.
But I was pissed because it wasn't Iowa. So I waited in 23. I went in and I wrestled in the Standard Navy.
Okay.
I wrestled internationally. I did pretty good. Drinking like a fish.
Mm-hmm.
And still dropping acid before I wrestled.
Wow.
Even in the military.
That takes a lot of tolerance to have drugs and alcohol in your system and then be focused enough to wrestle.
Well, I'd say by my last name, everybody that would know me would know that the family name is synonymous with drinking.
Okay, all right.
Mom, dad, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters. I mean, it was...
Sure.
Neighbors brought in... where we are now in the studio, the owners...
Sure.
Had spent many a drinking days at my house.
Sure. Well, you're Irish, am I correct?
100%. First generation American.
Sure. Do you feel like being Irish had anything to do with your drinking?
I think the stigma.
Okay.
Absolutely. When you go back and you do, after you're sober, you look back at events.
Sure. Yep.
So you look back like in high school. He's full-blooded Irish. He can drink anybody under the table. All those, wise tales or whatever you are.
Yeah, certainly.
And you look back on those and now, and you're like, wow, what a stupid reason.
Yeah. Well, that was, and it's funny you say that because I always liked meeting Irish people that would tell me that too. I'm like, no, that's not gonna happen. Even if I'm passed out on the floor, line up the shots. We're all Irish tonight.
Right, exactly. You do the Century Club with shots of whiskey instead of Budweiser.
Yeah. That's when it starts to get dangerous and blackouts happen.
Right. So. That's when you know you're true friends.
How long were you in the Navy?
I was in the Navy, so I got 5 years, then recalled back after 9/11.
Okay.
I joined Special Programs in 1996. That's when I graduated my Special Program training. And then we went over to Africa because within the last 5 years, the media has found out that, oh my gosh, we found Muslims getting radicalized, and the main area was Africa. Well, back in 96, we already knew that. Without anybody knowing. So we were a squad that was brought back together called Special Boat Team 12. They retired them out of Vietnam.
Okay.
And they were never to be brought back again until Osama bin Laden blew up the barracks in Dhahran.
Okay.
And then that's when SecDef and Admiral Borda, before he passed away, said, reman SBT-12 and get him over to Africa.
Okay.
And that's where I spent 4.5 years. Pretty much how it was. And we drank. So we would get a Connex box of our munitions, of my EOD stuff, and a lot of the SEAL side stuff.
Okay.
We would get that in one Connex box. And then in the other Connex box, they made sure we had it packed with alcohol. And
why do you think that was?
Because of what we did. I think even in dry countries, we were getting Connex drops.
Okay.
And I remember in Kuwait getting Connex drops. And I think it was so we could drink our way through what we were doing.
Yeah.
I was a part of the 181 American hostages in the U.S. Embassy.
Okay.
First confirmed was an 8-year-old child.
Yeah.
And that took my alcohol to a level that most people probably couldn't hang with.
Yeah. So by the time that happened, you were probably, how much were you drinking?
Oh, man. Easily 2 cases.
Yeah. And that's a day, guys. We're talking per day here.
Yes. And then, of course, you've got to pay your royalties to Mr. Crown Royal.
Well, certainly.
Yeah. So, you gotta run some Crown Royal down the belly too. So.
Certainly. Yeah. Well, what good's beer without Crown?
Right. That's what I tell people.
You gotta have it. You gotta have a chaser after that beer,
dude. Right, and at least get something good to taste.
Right. So, what happened? And I'm kind of going through your story kind of quick because I really want to get to the point where, we talk about kind of what you do now. So, but let's talk a little bit. What happened to you that made you decide that drinking and your behavior was no longer acceptable to you?
It was in Aurora. Right across, right at the bridge for 225 and Parker Road.
Okay.
And I rear-ended a Somali.
Okay.
It was Ramadan. I told the meat wagon that they weren't going to put an IV in her because it was Ramadan and, of course, Sharia law,
Yeah.
you know, as if we need any more laws in America. But anyway, I'm trying to find the date here. And excuse me, the stroke thing just doesn't really...
Hey, take your time, man.
Okay.
The only thing we're ever late for is our first AA meeting, so.
Right. So it was... Let's see here. Boom, boom. Give me my date. Anyway, it was in July.
Okay.
And, I'm sorry, it was June 29th, 2017.
There we go.
And it was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay.
And I'd rear-ended this lady, and I knew right away I had to render aid because she was Somali.
Okay.
So I just kept my hands, my 2 fingers on her wrist, and I just stroked her arm, telling her it would be okay. Got her on the phone with my insurance company. Fast forward, cop comes over, doesn't run my license plate. My license plate comes back as proceed with caution, CIA instruction only.
Sure.
So apparently the cop didn't do anything. So he yelled at me and said I was being insubordinate. And I said, sir, she's on the phone with my insurance company. And he hit me in the left leg, right at the fibula.
Okay.
And it just kind of shocked me back to my training.
It triggered you.
Yeah, she's trigger. So I told him one more time, and it was going to be lights out, and he did it. I put him lights out, and then the sergeant came to me and shook my hand and said, thank you for your service, and my name, and then they couldn't arrest me because I was on too many PTSD medication, too much...
They wouldn't be able to hold you and watch
back
you.
medication, you know, because I broke my back, neck, and legs while I was in. And, I you know, just that 24 hours after and the, what would you call it? I would say the categorizing or putting my life in folders.
Sure, okay.
In like in a drawer.
Sure, like a file folder.
Like a file folder,
organizing
yeah.
it,
I was organizing my life. Thank you very much. I was organizing my life and finding out that, damn, man, alcohol has been a part of everything that's ever gone bad for me.
Yeah.
So went to court, wound up getting a lesser charge. And they sent me into Veterans Treatment Court, which was the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Awesome.
Out of 18th Judicial District. I walked into the court, I was sober, and that's where I learned some skills to relate and to pass on. So as you and I talked on the phone, you know what I did in the Navy, and then you also know that I quit cold turkey.
Yes, I do know that.
And 3.5 weeks of almost dying, 170 over 180, I don't know how I didn't stroke.
I don't know either. Grace of God.
Right.
All I would know.
That's all I would know as well. So going through that kind of fight and then having other veterans continue to slip.
Okay.
And it's a phased court, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4.
Certainly.
And, of course, I flew through, sober, doing all my classes, and I'm an industrial engineer major with a counseling, AOD counseling minor.
Yeah, okay.
Because of everything that I was doing. Because the court wanted me to satisfy these requirements.
Sure.
But then helping others was like, okay, hold on, I don't get this piece of the pie. And you know what piece of the pie that was, which we talked yesterday, the behavioral cognitive link.
That's it.
And that's when I went back to school to get a little more education on that behavioral and the cognitive behavioral. And once I did that, I went into arts off of Potomac in Mississippi, and there's a lot of heroin addicts. And I kind of snubbed my nose at them. And then I started listening. And I started opening my heart up.
Mm-hmm.
And I started seeing, hey, this kid is only 22 years old. And he's in a civilian treatment court with 20 years of prison hanging over his head.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened. It may have been my mom's influence, but I started helping these civilians.
Yeah.
And some guys that are probably listening may know that I am considered Chantix of heroin.
Okay.
As we talked,
Yeah.
I give you 2 quit
Some
dates.
people will get that, some people won't.
Right. You get 1 quit date. That's when you go on methadone. And then, sorry, man, if you're going to be with me, a guy that went cold turkey,
Yeah.
you're coming off methadone.
Yep.
And I celebrate very shortly one gentleman that is 1 year sober off of heroin
That's awesome.
and methadone.
Wow.
Sober, not sober with a Band-Aid.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's one thing that, when we were talking yesterday, it seems like, you're really good at ripping off that Band-Aid with love. Does that make sense? You got to be stern, but you got to do it from your heart. Some people call it tough love, I guess. But, you just kind of seem to have this with you of understanding. I do have a question. So I'm a civilian, and there are a lot of things that I went through too. But when I got to the point where I wanted to sober up, my pride or my machismo, my ego got in the way. Do you think being part in the military and going through that had some effect on that? Do you think that might be a little different for people in the military?
I think, yes. I would consider my PTSD, if that's where you're...
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking
so-
about, and the trauma that we were talking about yesterday.
Yes, and my military trauma, aka PTSD, which is not just for military. Trauma is...
He's saying that for me.
Well, no,
Yeah.
trauma is trauma.
Uh-huh.
Period. It could be child abuse. It could be anything, bullying. But you find the trauma. And yes, the PTSD had to be ripped open.
Yeah.
My grandson was 8 years old when I quit drinking because I was at my peak of drinking when he was 8. Remember Somalia? That was my first confirmed kill, an 8-year-old child.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, that when you recognize the trauma, I think you can start dealing with the trauma and working on that trauma. But I think it takes you to be sober to really categorize.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
I mean, if I had alcohol in my system and tried to do what I do right now, it would not succeed. I would be so selfish and self-centered, and I would be thinking about myself so much. I mean, how many more times can I say self in one sentence right now?
Right.
And alcohol just takes that away from me. It rips it from me, and I am nowhere even close to being next to God or being in the sunlight of the Spirit.
And I would agree 100%. I think the Band-Aid's back on for the numbing effect, or
Sure.
if you will, like with a little child, you give them when they're just cutting their teeth, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you give them a little bit of
Numb.
the numbing
Right.
stuff. Sure.
Or for us, it was Jack Daniels from
Yeah.
our mom. Yeah, I mean, we all know the drill. Come on.
Yeah, we grew up in the 70s
We grew up,
and 80s.
come on,
so,
there
yeah.
you go. So, but I think when I started, and it's still a work in progress, I've just recently had a stroke, as you know, and we don't know what evidence is bringing that forth. But I think some of it has to do with working through some of the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't work through trauma without God and without sobriety.
Yeah.
Period.
Absolutely.
You have alcoholic and drug addicts. When you're in the alcoholic state,
Mm-hmm.
you only know that you are the power.
Yeah.
When you get sober, you know you understand that there's somebody greater than yourself.
Exactly.
And it could be anything, but for me it was God.
Yeah.
That had a lot to do with it.
Yeah. I think just realizing that there's something bigger than you that can help you, and the fact, I think this is very important, that you're not alone.
Yes.
That you don't have to do this by yourself.
Right.
I think some other good points on this, because I'm an AA member myself, and but there are things AA doesn't do. They don't deal with trauma. They don't deal with PTSD or depression. They're not licensed to do that. So getting therapy or talking to somebody else that's been there also is extremely helpful. And that's kind of where you come in with some veterans, and something I'm really excited to talk about. In fact, even after this podcast, you're getting ready to go downtown and work with some homeless veterans.
I'm going to be working with Warrior Now.
Okay.
And they are an organization that works with veterans and homeless veterans, with the Coalition of Homeless Vets. And today we will be dealing with the Denver Coalition of Homeless Veterans.
Okay.
And Heather Javernick is part of Aurora's Coalition of Homeless Vets.
Okay.
And and I forgot about this, and it's kind of funny. So you get Denver.
Uh-huh.
They're pushing the homeless out.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, so you drive by Cherry Creek Reservoir, where you're going to get onto the highway, and now we're starting to see little tent cities pop up there.
Yes.
And you know what's coming with those tent cities. Not
sure
saying...
they do that. Sure, we know what's going to happen. Well, we're going to be LA next. We're moving right towards it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, if we don't get enough people engaged...
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right on that. When I used to do this back in the 90s, everything was about community. And it seems like community is just gone.
It's gone.
There's another word I don't ever hear anymore either. It's called prevention. No, I don't hear much about prevention, which is just education before people get started, is really all it is.
Nancy Reagan, rest in peace. I mean...
God bless her.
She was... I think she was core.
Yes. I don't think we would actually... I think we would have gone through a lot worse in the 90s if Nancy Reagan wouldn't have stepped in and done something. The unfortunate part now, and we probably won't go too much into this, is just, here in Colorado, we don't have any... We have one detox left. Where are these guys going to go if they do want to get sober? I mean, there's not really anywhere for them to go. So they're going to end up in tents on the side of the road, drinking and drugging.
But nobody wants to go down there and say, hey, brother, what's going on?
Yeah, what's happening?
And I think when you start getting into those tent cities, and you go into the tent city that's over by Pepsi Center, you start understanding why, some people, a fellow Parker guy here that served in, I think, the Army, and he wants to be homeless. And he drinks, but he just wants to be homeless.
Uh-huh.
And I found that out by actually getting engaged and going down. And, it's not a superpower I have, but I know I can handle myself if anything were to blow up on me. So I go down and I engage. Mm-hmm. And I ask, do you want help?
And these guys will be honest with you.
Dead honest.
Yes, they will.
So I was in Arts off of Potomac,
Okay.
and there was a homeless gentleman that was coming in, and people were complaining, and I was like, "Don't complain. You were there.
That's you. Yeah. For the grace of God, there go I.
At least he is stepping forward." And the weird part is Arts got him Medicaid.
Okay.
So Medicaid, after he went through so much of the program, got him into sober living.
Yeah.
Remember Stout Street?
Oh,
We
I
have
remember
Stout. Come
yeah.
on.
Stout Street's still around, isn't
These
it?
these names need to start coming back up.
Yep.
There is a way.
There is a way. It's just nobody knows about it.
We need
and
to
nobody,
communicate.
yeah. And we need them to be able to get them there in a timely manner. Stout Street also owns the Phoenix Concept. And I was actually one of the original members of the Phoenix Concept back in 1989.
No way.
Ray Hayworth was my first sponsor.
Wow.
And I was one of the first people to go finish the program. So I'm very aware of what you're saying. I was homeless myself twice. And not the kind, sleeping on friends' couches homeless.
Right.
No, downtown trying to find a heat vent, type of homeless.
Where the steam was coming out.
Yeah, March is pretty freaking cold in Colorado. And even then you can sit there and deny, well, I'm still not an alcoholic. This isn't too bad, The denial will still kick in. And I agree, and that's part of what I'm doing is there are some people that do want to be homeless. And we're talking about alcoholics and addicts here. Not everybody that's homeless is
an alcoholic or
in
addict.
fact, 80%, like 70-80% of them aren't.
Right.
But there's that 1% or the whatever percentage that we call hopeless, where they need the only thing that's going to save them at this moment is God and some kind of
intervention.
Yep. Yeah. And I have a saying that I like to go by. You can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink, but you can shove his head in there. I'm sure make him wish he did.
Absolutely.
Sometimes addicts need that, alcoholics need that, and you kind of do that.
I try.
Yeah.
I have 7 successful heroin addicts that are now sober.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and I have.
Considering you've been sober 2.5 years.
Right, and I just took it straight on. I took it head on. The alcoholics are hard. The crystal meth addicts need the most amount of help, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because the minimization of their use and their drug.
Well, and it's becoming even more dangerous with fentanyl.
Fentanyl and now, so they're trying to get meth back to be a populace. So being what I was in the military, I have a little bit better communication of what's coming into the country and what they actually, so heroin's pre-packed with fentanyl.
Yep.
So you don't even have to, the drug dealer can cut it with something fancy for overdose, like elephant tranquilizer is now popular, lion tranquilizer.
I heard cat litter was popular too.
Yes, but you get your street swag by overdose.
Okay.
And they're like, "Oh my gosh, let's go over to this dealer. He had 3 overdoses last week."
Oh wow.
And you see that, and now crystal meth is becoming that.
Okay.
And you're having less of the heroin going OD.
Okay.
Versus now they're trying to do a trick on the crystal meth in order to make crystal meth a more popular drug. So, hence fentanyl.
Yeah.
Now they're putting in tranquilizers.
Yeah. That's just crazy. I mean, now it's like going to IKEA, buying something and not having to put it together, and not it not being that hard to put it together.
Right.
That's just, man, talk about customer service.
Right. I wish. Right.
Right,
Give me some IKEA stuff, and it's a one-stop shop,
Yeah, exactly, and that makes it even scarier. It does, because especially if people are going over to you. I was lucky enough I didn't get involved in many drugs. I had a little cocaine stint, but alcohol was my choice because
Mine as well.
if I knew if I did anything else, I was dead. I knew I'd be hooked, so I stayed away from that. So you're still doing a lot of work with veterans, things like that. Is there a way for, let's say I have some veterans listening, is there a way they can get in touch with you?
Well, yes. My number, which I will make public right now, 303-596-8410. And please call me and say, Greg, I want to get sober, or I don't know how. I don't know where to go, where to start. I'd like to read this mission for
Go
veterans.
right ahead.
It is Warrior Now. The mission is we connect veterans impacted by mental health diagnosis, PTSD, and/or addiction to resources, services, and mentorship through training peer mentors in order to help reduce our veterans to the journey of life, reintroduce our veterans into the journey of life. So with that being said, we also do help civilians, and especially me. I'm a mentor in the court systems. I also just picked up that meth addict, and the jail. I'm his sponsor. The jail releases him to his trigger.
Yeah, you were telling me about that yesterday. It was his mom was his trigger, and they released him
to his mom.
Yeah,
and I was so proud of this young man. He got on the phone with me right away and said, "Oh my gosh, Greg," and I said, "Austin, breathe. Do your 5 senses that I taught you on the jail phone."
Yep, that's how you deal with anxiety. Is the 5
senses.
Yep.
And I told him, I said, you're telling me that, you're wanting a sober living that's theologically related, religiously related. And step 7 actually had a bed for him, and he's now in step 7. And he never really was a religious guy, and now he really can't let go.
Yeah.
And I still know, even after my stroke, God wasn't ready.
Yeah.
My mom wasn't ready. Because I'm trying to do good work down here, like you are doing presently.
Yeah, that's why we're still here. We got work to do.
Oh, we got a lot of work to do.
I think the way I see it is, I spent a long time beating up God's children, and he really didn't like it. No. And I'm not allowed to do that anymore.
Me neither.
I'm not allowed to do it. Greg, thank you for being on. I really appreciate it, and you sharing like that and giving out information to be able to get in touch with you. So if you're even if you're a civilian and you need some help, reach out to Greg. If he can't help you, he's going to find somebody that will.
I know somebody that will help you.
Yeah. So we will find that for you. So thank you everybody for coming on and listening. Again, everybody's story is important. And, what it really comes down to is that we make a decision that we don't want to behave this way anymore. And we change that. And we do everything that we can to change it by taking an inventory. Greg brought this up. I call it step 4. He calls it his file cabinet. It doesn't matter what you call it. Doing the work is what matters. And then when you're done taking care of yourself, you get your butt out there and you help other people, even when you think you can't. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been Dion Miller with Trudging Together, Raw Recovery. I love you all, and have a day.